Good morning, everyone, and Sairam. So, how are you all? I hope that you all are fine. So, welcome back with the another session of history, chapter number 4, the Mughal Empire. So, before proceeding further, let's take a quick recap what we have learned in the previous part of this chapter. So, in previous part of the chapter, we have discussed about Mughal rulers. So here is the list of all the Mughal rulers, all the important Mughal rulers. First, Babur. So Babur, he was the first Mughal emperor. Basically, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi at the first battle of Panipat in 1526. Right? So who was Ibrahim Lodi? Ibrahim Lodi, he was the last Lodi ruler. So Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi at the first battle of Panipat in 1526. And with this, Babur led the foundation of Mughal Empire over the Indian subcontinent. Then after Babur, his son Humayun ascended his throne. Soon Humayun lost his kingdom to the Sher Shah Suri. Now who was Sher Shah Suri? He was an Afghan chief of Bihar. So Humayun lost his kingdom to Sher Shah Suri. Basically, Sher Shah Suri defeated Humayun at the battle of Chausa and Kannauj. So in 1540 till 1555, Sher Shah Suri or the Sur rulers ruled over the Indian subcontinent. Right? Now then again in 1555, Humayun recaptured Delhi and Agra and re-established Mughal rule over the Indian subcontinent. And then after that he just ruled only for 1 year till 1556. Clear? Now after Humayun, his son Akbar ascended his throne. So when Akbar ascended his throne, he was just 14 years old. So during the time of Akbar, second battle of Panipat was fought. First battle of Panipat was fought during the time of Babur, between Babur and Ibrahim Lodi in 1526. Clear? Second battle of Panipat was fought during the time of Akbar in 1556 between Mughals and the Afghan chief Hemu. So in the second battle of Panipat, Hemu was defeated and killed. So Mughal reoccupied Delhi and Agra. Clear? Now after Akbar, Jahangir ascended his throne. So Jahangir also followed his father's policy, that means Akbar's policy. And then after Jahangir, Shah Jahan ascended his throne, he also followed his grandfather and father's policy. Then at last Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb became emperor after imprisoning his father Shah Jahan at Agra fort and defeating his brother in the war of succession. Right? So Aurangzeb was the last powerful Mughal emperor, because after Aurangzeb, the other Mughal rulers, they all were weak, inefficient and corrupt. So he was the last powerful Mughal emperor. And if we talk about the last Mughal ruler, so the Bahadur Shah Zafar was the last Mughal emperor. So after the death of Aurangzeb, Mughal empire was started disintegrated. Clear? Now move on to the next topic, Mughal tradition of succession, which means like how Mughals believing in dividing their property. So first of all, Mughals did not believe in the rule of primogeniture. Now primogeniture means like a system where the eldest son inherits his father's estate. That means a system where the eldest son get his father's property. But Mughals did not believe in this rule. Rather, Mughal believed in the Mughal and Timurid custom of coparcenary, that means division of property amongst all the sons. So we can say that that means in Mughal Empire no son could go empty handed, but of course emperor only be one. Clear? Now, next topic, how was the relationship of Mughals with the other rulers? Basically, Mughals constantly campaigned and fought with the other rulers who refused to accept the Mughal supremacy. Many Indian rulers also joined Mughals voluntarily, basically with their own wish. By their own wish, we can say that. And some of the Rajput rulers, they just married their daughters into the Mughal family. Like for example, you all must have heard about the Jodhabai, right? Jodhabai, she was the daughter of Rajput ruler and married with the Mughal ruler, that means the Akbar. Clear? So many Rajput married their daughters into the Mughal families. Why? Because in return, these Rajput, they received high position in the Mughal court. Clear? In return, they received high position in the Mughal court. Now, the best part of in Mughal rule was that defeated rulers were treated honorably by the Mughals. Basically, these defeated rulers were given their land back as assignments, that is called Watan Jagirs. Clear? Now, the next topic, administration under the Mughal Empire. So under this, we are going to study about Mansabdari system, Zamindari system and the Subedari system. So let's first start with the Mansabdari system. Now, who were Mansabdars? So first of all, those who joined Mughal services, right? Those who joined Mughal services, they were called Mansabdars. Now in simple word, the term Mansabdar, it refers to an individual who hold a mansab. Mansab, that is position or rank. So mansab means position or rank, and Mansabdar means the holder of the mansab or the position. Clear? Who were the Mansabdar? Basically, the term Mansabdar refers to an individual who holds a mansab, and mansab means position or rank in the Mughal administration. Now, all these mansabs, those who get the highest position or rank, all these mansab, they were appointed from the diverse backgrounds, like for example Turkish, Irani, Afghans, Rajput, Maratha, etc. and etc. Clear? Who were Mansabdars? Now, let's read the Mansabdari system. What was the Mansabdari system? So first of all, it was the grading system. Mansabdari system, it was the grading system used by the Mughals to fix rank, their salary and military responsibility. So under this, basically mansab was fixed. Basically Mansabdari had fixed rank, fixed salary and military responsibility. Now this rank and salary were determined by a numerical value called Zat. Basically the mansab were divided into two. First one is the Zat and second one is the Sawar. Right. So Zat means the personal salary. Zat means the personal salary, and the Sawar means number of horses, or we can say that number of horses a Mansabdar had to maintain. So apart from their own salary, Mansabdar, they also responsible to maintain a specific number of Sawar, or we can say that horsemen. Clear? So the higher the Jat, the higher nobles' position and their salary. Now nobles with a Jat of 5,000 were ranked higher than those who had 1 5,000 zat. Now next thing is every civil and military officers were given a mansab, that means position or rank. So that means like military commander and revenue officers, even the important minister, they all had a mansab. In Akbar region there were 29 mansabdars. How many? In the Akbar region there were 29 mansabdar with the rank of 5,000 zat. Clear? Now let's read the function of mansabdars. So as I said, like the mansabdar, they were responsible to maintain the specific number of sawar or horsemen to increase the military strength of the ruler. Clear? Now second thing is, what was the jagir? So these mansabdar, they received their salaries as a revenue assignment called jagir. Clear? So first function was that like these mansabdar, they were required to maintain a specific number of sawar, or we can say that horsemen, to increase the military strength of the ruler. Now these mansabdar, they received their salary as revenue assignment called jagir. But they were not, that means these mansabdars, they were not the owner of the jagir. They had only right to collect revenue from this jagir. Basically these mansabdar, they just served in some another part of the country, they just lived somewhere else. These jagirs were carefully assessed so that the revenue was roughly equal to the salary of the mansabdars. Clear? Now zabt. Okay, first of all, zabt was a revenue system, or we can say land revenue system. So Akbar decided his land revenue system with the help of the brilliant revenue expert Raja Todarmal. Right? So who was Raja Todarmal? He was Akbar's revenue minister. Clear? So under Akbar's and Todarmal's system, average production of different crops as well as average price prevailing over the last 10 years was calculated to fixed land revenue. So this system was called, first of all, 10th yearly settlement. That means each provinces had fixed revenue circles with the fixed revenue rates for individual crops. So this revenue system was called zabt. Clear? In simple word, zabt was a revenue system under each provinces had fixed revenue circle with the fixed revenue rate for individual crops. So one third of the production was the state's share. Now, so Akbar's revenue minister Todarmal, he just carried out a careful survey of crop yield for a 10-year period. So basically this land revenue system, Akbar's land revenue system, was continued till the end of the Mughal Empire. Clear? What was zabt? Zabt was a revenue system under which each provinces had a fixed revenue circle with the fixed revenue rates for individual crops. Okay, now the interesting fact during the Aurangzeb region. So as I told you, basically during the time of the Akbar, there were 29 mansabdars, right? Now during the time of Aurangzeb, the number of mansabdar increased to 79. So as a result, they had to wait for a long time before they received a jagir. Now what was jagir? These mansabdar, basically they received their salary as revenue assignments called jagir. So actual revenue collected from jagir was often less than the granted sum. So as a result, these jagirs or mansabdar, they started collected as much revenue as possible. But Aurangzeb, was unable to control this. So thus peasantry suffered a lot. Now next, zamidars and zabt. So zamidars, basically Mughal used the term zamidar to describe all the intermediators, right? This word was used for the intermediators, whether they were the local headmen of the village or the power chieftains. Basically these zamidar, they just worked as intermediator between the peasants and the central government revenue department. Now if we talk about the function of the zamidar, so they collect taxes. They collect taxes from the peasants and they submitted to the central government revenue department. Clear? So zamidar, they worked as an intermediator between the peasants and the central government revenue system. They collect taxes from the peasants and they submit it to the central government revenue department. Now next, Subedar and Suba. Abul Fazl. Remember who was Abul Fazl? He was one of the 9 gems or Navratna in the Akbar's court, and he also wrote Akbar Nama or Aine Akbari. Abul Fazl explained that Mughal Empire was divided into provinces, that means states, called Subas, right? Abul Fazl, he explained that the entire Mughal Empire was divided into provinces, and for the provinces the term they used Suba. Now all these Subas were governed by the Subedar. Each and every Suba were governed by the Subedar, and who carried out both political and military function. Now the Subedar was supported by the other officers for the maintenance of peace, and order in their Subas. Okay, now let's see the other officers. First, Diwan. Each Suba had financial officer and they also known as Diwan. Bakshi, that means the military paymaster, and each Suba had also the minister in charge of religious and the charitable patronage. They were called Sadar. Faujdar, military commanders, and Kotwal, that means the town police commander. So they support Subedar to maintain peace and order in their Suba. So is it clear? Suba means like the entire Mughal Empire was divided into provinces called Suba, and each Suba were governed by the Subedar. Clear? Now these Subedars, they were supported by the officers like the Diwan, Bakshi, Sadar, Faujdar and Kotwal. Okay. Now let's read the difference between Iqtidar, Mansabdar and the Subedar. Remember, this term we used in the 3rd chapter of history, the Delhi Sultanate, Iqtidar. Okay, now let's first understand the difference between the Iqtidar, Mansabdar and Subedar. Okay, on the basis of first, land was called. So under the Delhi Sultanate, Iqta was the term used for land, and under the Mughal Empire, Jagir and Suba used term used for land. Now the governor of the land under the Delhi Sultanate were called Iqtidar or Mukti, and under the Mughal Empire, Mansabdar, that means or Jagirdar, or we can also say Subedar. Now the functions. So basically Iqtidar, Mansabdar and Subedar, their function were common. They all were collected taxes from their land, right? Second thing is they paid salaries to the soldiers from taxes they collected. But Iqtidar and the Subedar, they also provided military support to their rulers. Now, next, residence. So, Iqtidar, they just lived inside the Iqta. They ruled. That means their land where they ruled over there. Mansabdar, they never lived in their Jagir. Basically, they just lived somewhere else. And Subedar, they also lived in their Suba. So, is it clear the difference between the Iqtidar, Mansabdar, and Subedar? Okay. Now, next, Akbarnama and Aine Akbari. About Akbarnama and Aine Akbari, we have already discussed in the second part of this chapter. So, Abul Fazl, he was Akbar's close friend, and Kotiyar, he was given the responsibility of writing the history of his region. So, he wrote 3-volume history of Akbar's titled Akbar Nama. Clear? So first volume basically that give us a detailed information about Akbar's ancestor, right? Second volume of Akbarnama give us the detailed information about the events of Akbar region, and the third volume, it is also known as Aine Akbari. It deals with Akbar's administration, household, army, the revenues, the geography of his empire, the tradition and the culture of the people living in India, statistical details about like crops, yields, prices, wages and revenue. Clear? Okay. Now, next topic, religious development during Akbar's region. Akbar was famous not because like he was the great emperor or he just ruled over the huge empire. He was famous because of his views on religion. Basically, Akbar established harmony in his empire by followed the policy of religious intolerance. Clear? So, Akbar started religious discussion when he was at Fatehpur Sikri in 1570s with the religious scholars of the various religion like ulema, Brahmins, priests and Zoroastrians. Now their discussions took place in the Ibadat Khan. So Ibadat Khan was the place where their discussion took place. Now, while having the discussion of these religious scholars, he realized that religious scholars who emphasized the ritual and dogma were often by bigots. Now what was the meaning of the bigots? So basically, these religious, we can say that these religious scholars like ulema and the Brahmins, when they made their statements, so they never wanted that their statements to be questioned by anyone. So he called such people bigots. That means an individual who intolerant another person's religious belief or culture. So their teaching create division and the disharmony among the subjects. Now next thing is basically Akbar believed in the principle of Sulh-e-Kul. So he developed the idea of Sulh-e-Kul. Sulh-e-Kul means universal peace. Sulh-e-Kul means universal peace. So Akbar believed the idea of Sulh-e-Kul or the universal peace. And this idea, that means the Sulh-e-Kul and universal peace, focused on tolerance, honesty, justice and peace. Abul Fazl helped Akbar in framing a vision of governance around this idea. So as I said, basically Akbar established harmony in his empire by followed the policy of religious intolerance. Basically, we already talked about the Jizya tax. So Akbar was basically he abolished Jizya tax, which was paid by the non-Muslims, and he also abolished pilgrimage tax on bathing at the holy places. So with this, your chapter ended here. I hope you all understood this chapter. Now, quiz time. So, first question, Akbar's revenue minister was, options are Todarmal, option B Tansen, and option C Birbal. So, who was the Akbar's revenue minister? Yes, Raja Todarmal. Raja Todarmal, he was the revenue minister in the Akbar's court. Now the second question, Sulhekul. Sulhekul means, options are first general discrimination, B universal peace, and C unity. So Sulhekul means universal peace. Akbar believed in the idea of Sulhekul or the universal peace. Now the third question, many Rajput married their daughters into the Mughal families in order to get high position or rank in the Mughal administration. Now the question number 4, ranks and salaries of the Mansabdars were determined by a numerical value called Zat. Now question number 5th, Abul Fazl's. Abul Fazl's Ain-e-Akbari deals with the Akbar's administration. Right? Abul Fazl's Ain-e-Akbari deals with the Akbar's administration. And last question, peasants was the main source of income during the Mughal Empire. So this statement is true. Peasants was the main source of income during the Mughal Empire. So that's all for today. Have a nice day and thank you.